The dining room at my parents' house smelled like pot roast and disappointment. My disappointment specifically. It always did on Sunday dinners when the whole family gathered to dissect my life choices over Mom's cooking. I sat at my usual spot, the one closest to the kitchen door for easy escape routes, with my book propped against my water glass. Historical Analysis of Financial Fraud Patterns. Not exactly light reading, but it beat engaging with the conversation happening around me. "I'm serious, Emma, you should be thanking me," Derek said, cutting into his second helping of roast. My older brother had that smug expression he wore whenever he thought he'd done something clever. "Your apartment looked like a hoarder's den. Boxes everywhere, papers stacked to the ceiling. It was embarrassing." I turned a page, not looking up. The chapter on the Enron scandal was actually fascinating. Amazing how patterns repeated themselves across decades. "Emma, your brother is talking to you," Dad said, that edge of irritation in his voice that suggested I was being rude by not participating in the celebration of my belongings being sold without permission. "I heard him," I replied quietly, eyes still on the text. "He broke into my apartment and sold my property. I'm just trying to decide if pressing charges would be worth the family drama." "Press charges?" Mom's voice went up an octave. "Emma Louise Harrison, your brother did you a favor. You're 34 years old, living in that tiny apartment, working that strange job nobody understands, surrounded by boxes of old papers and folders. It's not healthy." "It's not strange," I said calmly, finally looking up from my book. "I'm a forensic accountant. I work with law enforcement to analyze financial crimes. The papers you're calling junk are case files." "Case files belong at your office," Derek said, waving his fork dismissively. "Not piled up in your living room like some crazy person's conspiracy board. When you gave me your spare key last month to water your plants, I took it as a sign. You clearly needed help." I'd given him the key because I was going to be out of town for a week on a work trip. A trip I couldn't discuss because it involved testifying at a grand jury hearing in another state. But my family didn't know that. They never asked about the specifics of my work. "How much did you get for everything?" I asked, my tone still even. Derek grinned. $2,000. Can you believe it? Some antique dealer said most of it was worthless, but he took the whole lot off my hands. Said something about recycling the paper. "I already deposited the check in your account. You're welcome." $2,000. For approximately 40 boxes containing 7 years of financial documentation, transaction records, corporate filings and handwritten ledgers that I'd been meticulously organizing and cross-referencing for the past 18 months. "Derek, you shouldn't have gone through Emma's things without asking," my younger sister Jennifer said quietly from across the table. "At least someone had some sense." "Oh please," Derek scoffed. "Have you seen that apartment? I did her a favor. Maybe now she'll have room for actual furniture. Maybe even date someone. When's the last time you went out, Em? Hard to bring someone home when your place looks like a serial killer's evidence room." "Derek," Dad's voice held a warning, but it was half-hearted. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," Derek continued. "Emma's been weird about work ever since she left that accounting firm. This forensic stuff working with police, it's not normal. Real accountants work for corporations, make real money. They don't surround themselves with boxes of old receipts like some kind of obsessed detective." I carefully placed my bookmark, closed my book and set it down on the table. The chapter on Enron could wait. "The antique dealer," I said slowly. "What was his name? What does it matter?" Derek was already reaching for more mashed potatoes. "He paid cash, well check. The stuff is gone." "You're welcome." "Derek." "His name." Something in my voice made him pause. "I don't know. Some guy. He had a card. Vintage documents or something." "Why? Do you still have the card?" "Probably in my car." "Why are you being weird about this?" Mom set down her serving spoon with a sigh. "Emma, your brother went out of his way to help you. The least you could do is show some gratitude instead of interrogating him." "Help me," I repeated softly. "He broke into my apartment." "He had a key," Dad interrupted. "That was given for a specific purpose, went through my personal belongings and sold them without my knowledge or consent. That's not help. That's theft." "It's not theft when it's family," Mom said firmly. "Family helps each other. You were clearly struggling to let go of all that clutter." Derek took initiative. Jennifer opened her mouth, probably to defend me again, but her husband Mark touched her arm and shook his head slightly. Smart man. He'd learned not to get involved in family politics. Those boxes, I said, keeping my voice level despite the knot forming in my stomach, were not clutter. They were evidence in an active federal investigation. The table went quiet. Evidence. Dad's tone shifted slightly, though still skeptical. Emma, you're not actually FBI. You're a contractor or consultant or whatever. Real evidence would be in police custody. I work with multiple federal agencies, I explained, not for the first time. When cases involve complex financial fraud, they bring in specialists. That's what I do. I analyze financial patterns, trace money movement, build cases. The documents I keep at home are copies for my analysis work. The originals are secured, but I need working copies to do my job. So they're just copies, Derek said, relaxing. Then what's the big deal? Make new copies. I really looked at him. My brother, who'd graduated with a business degree and now managed a car dealership. Who'd spent his whole life taking shortcuts, making surface-level assessments, never bothering to understand complexity. Derek, when did you sell the boxes? Yesterday afternoon. Why? Yesterday. The day before I was supposed to present my findings to the FBI field office. The culmination of 18 months of work tracing financial transactions through shell corporations, offshore accounts, and deliberately obscured paper trails. And you're sure he took everything? All the boxes. Every single one. Cleared out your whole living room. The place looks so much better now. You'll see when you get home. I pulled out my phone and opened my calendar, scrolling to yesterday's date. 3 missed calls from an unknown number while I'd been on the plane back to town. 2 voicemails I hadn't listened to yet. Emma, put your phone away at the table, Mom chided. We're having family dinner. I ignored her and played the first voicemail on low volume. Ms. Harrison, this is Special Agent Chin from the FBI. We need to speak with you urgently regarding the Meridian case. Please call me back immediately at this number. The second voicemail was shorter, more tense. Ms. Harrison, this is Agent Chin again. We have a situation. Call me back now. I looked up from my phone. Everyone at the table was staring at me now. What case? Jennifer asked quietly. I can't discuss details, I said. But Derek, you need to tell me everything about this dealer. Where did you find him? How did he know to contact you? He didn't contact me, Derek said, and for the first time, I heard a hint of uncertainty in his voice. I found an ad online. We buy vintage documents and paper collections. Figured it was perfect. Called him, sent photos. He came by the next day with cash. Photos, I repeated. You sent photos of my documents to a stranger online. They were just old papers, Emma. Receipts and bank statements and boring corporate stuff. How was I supposed to know? The doorbell rang. We all looked toward the front of the house. It was nearly 8 on a Sunday evening. Not a typical time for visitors. I'll get it, Dad said, standing. I was already on my feet, phone in hand, dialing the number from Agent Chen's voicemail. It rang once before he picked up. Miss Harrison? Agent Chen, I just got your messages. I've been traveling and... Where are you right now? My parents' house. Why? What's the address? I heard voices from the front hallway. Loud, official voices. The kind that made my stomach drop even though I'd done nothing wrong. Agent Chen, what's happening? Miss Harrison, we have reason to believe the documents from your apartment were taken as part of a deliberate effort to compromise the Meridian investigation. We need to locate those documents immediately. I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need you to answer honestly. Did you sell or dispose of any materials related to the case? No, I said firmly. But my brother did. Yesterday. He sold them to someone claiming to be an antique dealer. The silence on the other end of the line lasted 3 heartbeats. Your brother, Agent Chen's voice had gone very cold. Did what? The voices from the hallway grew louder. I heard Dad's confused protests and then footsteps, multiple sets, heading toward the dining room. I'm at my parents' house for dinner, I said quickly. He just told me about it. I had no idea. Stay where you are. Don't let your brother leave. The phone went dead just as 6 people entered the dining room. 3 FBI agents in tactical gear, 2 more in suits, and 1 woman in a DA jacket. All of them had the kind of serious expressions that made Derek's face go pale. Emma Harrison? The lead agent asked, though his eyes had already found me. Yes. He held up credentials. Special Agent Martinez, FBI. We spoke with Agent Chen. You're aware of the situation with your documents. I just found out 10 minutes ago. I gestured toward Derek, who looked like he might be sick. My brother sold them yesterday without my knowledge or permission. Every eye in the room turned to Derek. Who sold what? Mom's voice was shrill. What is happening? Agent Martinez kept his focus on Derek. Sir, I need you to stand up slowly and keep your hands visible. What? Why? Derek's voice cracked. I didn't do anything wrong. I just sold some old papers. You disposed of evidence in a federal investigation, one of the suited agents said sharply. That's obstruction of justice at minimum. Depending on your involvement, it could be conspiracy, evidence tampering, or accessory to fraud. Dad stood up, his face flushed. Now wait just a minute. My son didn't know anything about any investigation. He was helping his sister clean her apartment. This is obviously a misunderstanding. Mr. Harrison, I need you to sit down. Agent Martinez's voice wasn't loud, but it carried absolute authority. Your son unlawfully entered a private residence and removed materials that were part of an active federal investigation into an $85 million fraud case. Whether he knew what he was doing or not, the results are the same. 85 million? Jennifer whispered. I moved around the table toward Agent Martinez. The documents he sold, do you know where they are now? That's what we're trying to determine. The antique dealer your brother contacted was likely working for the targets of our investigation. They've been trying to locate your working files for months. But how would they know where Emma lived? Mom asked, her voice trembling now. How would they know to contact Derek? Agent Martinez looked at Derek. Sir, the ad you responded to, had you searched for it specifically, or did it appear in your feed? Derek's hands were shaking. I was looking at Emma's Instagram. She posted a photo from inside her apartment a few months ago. You could see some of the boxes in the background. I was just looking for a way to help. The ad showed up in my feed after that. I thought it was a coincidence. Targeted advertising, one of the other agents muttered. They've been monitoring her social media, identified family members, and fed content specifically to people who might have access to her residence. I felt cold. They've been watching me. The Meridian Corporation has extensive resources, Agent Martinez said. We've known they were trying to locate and destroy evidence. We just didn't anticipate they'd find a way to use your family to do it. This is insane, Dad said, but his voice had lost its confidence. You're saying Emma was in danger? That people were targeting her? Targeting her work, Agent Martinez corrected. Ms. Harrison has been building a case that would expose decades of financial fraud. The people she's investigating have billions of dollars at stake. They've been very motivated to stop her. Derek had sunk back into his chair, his face ashen. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Thought I was helping. The apartment looked so messy and Mom kept saying Emma needed someone to intervene and I just thought you knew better, I finished quietly. Thought my work was junk. Thought I needed saving from myself. Emma, that's not fair, Mom started, but Agent Martinez cut her off. Ma'am, your son's actions, regardless of intent, have potentially compromised a major federal investigation. 18 months of work may be unrecoverable. Multiple agencies have been involved in this case. If the defendants successfully destroy the evidence, they may walk free. But there are originals, right? Jennifer asked. Emma said these were copies. The originals are secured, yes, Agent Martinez confirmed. But Ms. Harrison's working files contained her analysis, her cross-references, her notes on patterns and connections. That analysis is what makes the raw data usable in court. Without it, we'd be starting over from scratch. How long would that take? Dad asked. Agent Martinez looked at me. I knew the answer. So did he. 18 months minimum, I said. Maybe longer. The patterns I found required constant cross-referencing across thousands of transactions. I'd have to rebuild the entire analytical framework. And the statute of limitations on some of the charges expires in 14 months, Agent Martinez added. Which means if we can't recover your work, Some of the defendants will walk free simply due to time constraints. The room was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Derek, I said quietly. I need you to tell these agents everything. The ad you saw, the messages you exchanged, the person you met where they took the boxes. Everything. I don't remember all the details. Derek's voice was barely audible. I deleted the messages after the sale was complete. I thought I was doing a good thing. One of the agents pulled out a tablet. We'll need your phone. Our tech team can recover deleted messages and trace the IP addresses. But we need it now. Derek hesitated, looking at Dad as if for permission. Give them the phone, Derek, Dad said heavily. As Derek handed over his phone with shaking hands, Mom started crying. Not loud, dramatic crying, but the quiet kind that was somehow worse. I don't understand, she said. Emma, why didn't you tell us your work was so important? Why didn't you explain? I looked at her, at all of them. I tried. For years I tried. But every time I mentioned my work, you changed the subject. Every time I explained what I was doing, you dismissed it as boring or weird or not a real career. You decided what I did wasn't important, so you stopped listening. That's not true, Dad protested. We always supported you. You supported the version of me you wanted to exist, I corrected gently. The one who worked at a big accounting firm, who had a normal job, who didn't bring work home. When I became something different, something you didn't understand, you decided I was the problem. Agent Martinez's phone buzzed. He stepped away to take the call, speaking in low, urgent tones. Emma, sweetheart, we had no idea. Mom wiped at her eyes. If we'd known it was this serious. You didn't need to know it was serious, I said. You just needed to respect that it was mine. My work, my choice, my life. Agent Martinez returned, his expression grim. The tech team traced the online ad to a proxy server, but they're working on tracking the actual source. Ms. Harrison, we need you to come with us. We need a full accounting of everything that was in those boxes. Of course. Wait, Derek stood up suddenly. What's going to happen to me? Am I being arrested? Agent Martinez studied him for a long moment. That depends on what our investigation reveals. If you genuinely had no knowledge of the investigation and no contact with the targets beyond the sale itself, you may face charges for unlawful entry and evidence tampering. If we find evidence of coordination or conspiracy, the charges will be more severe. But I didn't know. Derek's voice rose in panic. How could I have known? Ignorance isn't a defense when you unlawfully enter someone's residence and dispose of their property, one of the other agents said flatly. You should have asked permission. You should have respected boundaries. You didn't, and now there are consequences. Dad moved to Derek's side. We'll get you a lawyer. A good one. This will be okay. Mr. Harrison, Agent Martinez said not unkindly, you should prepare for the possibility that your son will face federal charges. The best thing he can do now is cooperate fully and hope the courts consider his lack of knowledge as a mitigating factor. This is ridiculous, Mom said, anger breaking through her tears. He was trying to help his sister. You can't punish someone for that. Ma'am, he broke into her apartment and sold her property, Agent Martinez said. The fact that he thought he was helping doesn't change the legal reality. And given that the property turned out to be evidence in a major federal case, the consequences are significant. Another agent appeared in the doorway. Sir, we need to clear the scene. Tech team is en route to process the brothers' vehicle and electronic devices. Process. Dad's voice went up. You're going to search Derek's car? And his computer, phone, tablet, any electronic device he's used in the past 6 months, Agent Martinez confirmed. We need to establish the full scope of contact with the targets and determine if there was any coordination. There wasn't. Derek insisted. I just answered an ad. I took photos of the boxes, sent them, got offered money and made the sale. That's it. Then our investigation will confirm that, Agent Martinez said. But we have to investigate. The stakes are too high to take anyone's word for it. I grabbed my bag from the back of my chair. I'll go with you now and start reconstructing what I remember. Emma, don't, Jennifer said quickly. Don't you want a lawyer too? I didn't do anything wrong, I said simply. I'm the victim here and I'm a federal contractor who wants to help recover the investigation. I don't need a lawyer. Agent Martinez nodded. We appreciate your cooperation, Ms. Harrison. As I headed toward the door, Derek called out, "Emma, I'm sorry. I really am. I was just trying to help." I stopped and turned back to look at him. My brother, who'd spent our whole lives assuming he knew better, taking charge, making decisions for other people because he was so certain of his own judgment. "You thought my life was a mess," I said quietly. "You thought I needed rescuing. You never once considered that maybe, just maybe, I knew what I was doing. That the boxes you saw as clutter were actually the most important work of my career." "How was I supposed to know?" he protested weakly. "You could have asked," I said. "Instead of breaking into my apartment, going through my private belongings and selling them without permission, you could have called me and asked if I needed help. You could have respected my autonomy and my choices. You could have trusted that I'm a competent adult who can manage her own life." "We were worried about you," Mom said. "No," I corrected gently. "You were uncomfortable with me. With the life I'd built that didn't match your expectations. There's a difference." I followed the agents out of the dining room, leaving my family sitting in stunned silence around the table, pot roast growing cold, the Sunday dinner tradition shattered by the weight of federal consequences. The night air was cool as we stepped outside. 3 black SUVs were parked in the driveway, and I could see more agents examining Derek's car under portable lights. "Ms. Harrison," Agent Martinez said as we walked toward the vehicles, "I need to ask you something directly. Is there any possibility your brother was acting with knowledge of the investigation? Any chance this was intentional?" "No," I said without hesitation. "Derek is impulsive and arrogant and has always thought he knows what's best for everyone around him. But he's not malicious. He genuinely thought he was helping me by getting rid of what he saw as junk." "Even after you'd specifically not asked for his help?" "Especially then," I said. "Derek has never met a boundary he respected. It's who he is." Agent Martinez opened the SUV door for me. "The defendants in your case, they would have known your family dynamics. They would have researched everyone close to you looking for vulnerabilities. A well-meaning brother with a history of overstepping, that's exactly the kind of person they'd target." I slid into the back seat. "You think they engineered this? The targeted ads, the timing." "I think they created an opportunity and waited for someone to take it," he said. "Your brother made his own choices, but those choices were influenced by very sophisticated social engineering." As we pulled away from my parents' house, I looked back to see Derek being led outside by 2 agents, his hands cuffed in front of him. Mom was crying on the porch, Dad standing beside her with his arm around her shoulders, both of them looking smaller and older than I'd ever seen them. Jennifer stood apart, her phone pressed to her ear, calling a lawyer probably. At least someone in the family was thinking clearly. "The documents your brother sold," Agent Martinez said, turning in the front seat to look at me. "How much of your analysis can you reconstruct from memory?" "Maybe 60%, I said. "The basic patterns and connections definitely. But there were specific details, particular transactions that stood out as anomalies. Those are harder to recall without the physical notes. And if we can't recover the originals, then we start over. Request new copies from banks, corporations, government agencies. Most of it is accessible, but it takes time. Months and months of time we may not have." My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "I'm so sorry. We should have listened to you. We should have respected your work. This is our fault." I didn't respond immediately. Part of me wanted to agree, to let the anger and hurt pour out. But mostly I just felt tired. Another text came through, this one from an unknown number. "We have what we need. Stop the investigation or your family suffers. Your choice." I showed the message to Agent Martinez immediately. His expression hardened. "They're desperate. That's good for us. Desperate people make mistakes. But it also means they're dangerous. We're going to need to put protection details on your parents and siblings until we resolve this." "Protection details? You mean like witness protection?" "Not full protection, but security surveillance. We can't risk them being used as leverage against you or becoming collateral damage if the defendants decide to escalate." The SUV merged onto the highway heading toward the federal building downtown. Behind us, I could see 2 more vehicles following. My security detail, I realized. "Ms. Harrison," Agent Martinez said, "I know this evening has been traumatic. Your brother violated your privacy and potentially compromised your work. Your family dismissed your career and made you feel unsupported. But I need you to understand something important." "What's that?" The work you've been doing, the analysis in those boxes, it matters. Not just to this case, but to thousands of victims who lost their retirement savings, their homes, their futures to Meridian Corporation's fraud. You've been building a case that could recover billions of dollars and put genuinely dangerous people in prison for a very long time. I know, I said quietly. I'm not sure you do, he said. We work with a lot of contractors, a lot of analysts. Most are competent. Some are good. But Ms. Harrison, you're exceptional. The connections you've found, the patterns you've identified. We have agents with decades of experience who didn't see what you saw. You've built something remarkable. I looked out the window at the city lights streaming past. My family thinks I'm weird. Your family doesn't understand what you do. That's their limitation, not yours. And after tonight, I think they're starting to realize that. My phone buzzed again. Mom, this time. Emma, please come back. We need to talk about this. Derek is being arrested. They're taking him away. Please, honey. We're family. I showed the message to Agent Martinez. Can I respond? What do you want to say? I thought about it for a long moment. That I'll help Derek as much as I can, but there are consequences for his actions. That being family doesn't mean having the right to violate boundaries and face no repercussions. That I love them, but I'm tired of not being respected. That sounds fair. But Emma, he used my first name for the first time. You don't owe them a response right now. You don't owe them your emotional energy when you need to focus on salvaging the investigation. Being a good daughter doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. I typed out a simple message. I'm helping the FBI recover the investigation. Derek made his choices. We'll talk when I'm done. The federal building loomed ahead, all concrete and glass and the weight of justice. Somewhere in that building were other agents, other analysts, all working on cases that mattered, cases that protected people, cases that held powerful criminals accountable. My family had never understood that. They'd seen boxes of papers and called it junk. They'd seen dedication and called it obsession. They'd seen important work and decided it was worthless because it didn't fit their definition of success. Agent Martinez, I said as we pulled into the underground garage, the Meridian case. If we can't recover my analysis, if we have to start over and some of the defendants walk free, what happens to the victims? They lose, he said simply. They already lost their money. But they'd also lose the chance for justice, for seeing the people who stole from them face consequences. That's what we're fighting for. Not just convictions but accountability. Then we'd better figure out where Derek's antique dealer took my boxes. Already working on it. Tech team is tracking his digital footprint. We've got agents interviewing neighbors near your apartment to see if anyone saw the vehicle used for pickup. We're checking traffic cameras, running facial recognition on anyone who might have been surveilling your building. We'll find them. And if they've already destroyed everything? Agent Martinez smiled slightly. Then we make do with what we have left. Your memory, your analytical skills, and your exceptional ability to find patterns in financial chaos. It won't be easy. But we don't give up on cases this important. The elevator opened directly into a secure floor. More agents, more computers, more of the invisible infrastructure of federal law enforcement that most people never saw. My family thought I had a strange job, working late hours on incomprehensible financial documents, bringing home boxes of boring papers to analyze. They didn't understand that this was how you caught the criminals who wore expensive suits and hid behind shell corporations. This was how you protected people who trusted the system and got betrayed. This was important work. And tonight, whether they understood it or not, my family had learned that lesson the hard way. Conference room 3. Agent Martinez guided me down a hallway. We've got coffee, food if you're hungry, and a whiteboard. Let's start reconstructing what we can from memory. Even if we recover the physical documents, having your knowledge documented separately will strengthen the case. I set down my bag and picked up a marker. The whiteboard was large, blank, waiting to be filled with the patterns only I could see. The Meridian Corporation operated through 17 primary shell companies. I began writing as I spoke. The money flowed in patterns, 3-month cycles, moving through offshore accounts in the Caymans, then Luxembourg, then back to domestic accounts disguised as legitimate business income. Agent Martinez pulled out a laptop, recording everything. Other agents filtered into the room, listening, taking notes. I wrote faster, the patterns emerging from memory like they'd been waiting to be released. Account numbers, transaction dates, Anomalous transfers that had taken me months to identify and now poured out in a stream of recollection. Somewhere across town, Derek was being processed into federal custody, learning that good intentions didn't excuse bad actions. Mom and Dad were probably still crying, still trying to understand how their Sunday dinner had ended with FBI raids and federal charges. And somewhere else, the people who'd stolen $85 million from innocent victims were probably celebrating, thinking they'd won, thinking they'd successfully destroyed the evidence that could convict them. They were wrong. I filled the first whiteboard and moved to a second. The case was still alive. The investigation continued. And I was going to make absolutely certain that justice was served, even if I had to rebuild every single analysis from memory. Because that's what forensic accountants do. We find the patterns. We trace the money. We build the cases that hold criminals accountable. Even when our own families think we're just collecting junk. Especially then.